So when I worked out that I wanted to put together my own production, I actually came out of an audition with some of my best mates. It's an audition that we didn't get. I booked Hot Shoe Shuffle the first time when I was 17, but when Hot Shoe Shuffle came back around again about 10, 15 years later, I was too old, and myself and a bunch of the guys who originally did it didn't get the job. It was one of those moments, like light bulb moments, where I don't want to wait by the phone anymore for jobs. I want to create my own work. So I have a background of doing hip hop. We choreographed X Factor and worked on So You Think You Dance and shows like that. But when I realized that tap was my passion, that's when I put all my attention into that niche market of building a production, the Tap Pack, back in 2013. Myself, Jordan Pollard, Thomas Egan, and Nigel Turner-Carroll, they're my 4 creatives in the Tap Pack. We all had a love for tapping, the Rat Pack, and singers like Frank Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr. And the very first gig that we did with the Tap Pack was we got booked to do a wedding. So we only had to put together like a 5-minute set for a wedding job. And that was the very first performance we ever did. We got an opportunity to perform at the Riverside Theatre about 6 months later, and a show had dropped out of that theatre, and it was an opening and they were looking for a show. We said we had a show called the Tap Pack, but we actually only had a 5-minute gig. But we kind of did a sneaky little lie and said, we have this show that's ready. So they put the Tap Pack on at the Riverside Theatre, and we had our show that we had to meet, this deadline. So from the humble beginnings of performing at a wedding, the Tap Pack went on to perform on London's West End. Last year we did a North American tour for 10 weeks. We went to China, we've been to Edinburgh Fringe Festival twice, we've been over to Beijing, we've been to Berlin. So it's been an incredible ride.
So I've had a fun career. I've worked with a lot of international artists like Katy Perry and Taylor Swift. I worked with a lot of Australian artists as well. I also worked on Happy Feet 2. I played Atticus. I've worked overseas as well on Bollywood movies. Went to Abu Dhabi with Kylie Minogue. I've also choreographed a lot of TVCs. Went to Shanghai and did a TVC for Disney over there. Done a lot of live TV, so I've done like 7 years of X Factor, choreographed an X Factor as well. Yeah, so I've had a fun...
It's been a good run.
It's been a good run. So I booked my first job when I was 17, and I'm pretty sure it was with you, right? And it was Grease Arena Spectacular. So this is musical theatre. The next one was The Boy from Oz with Hugh Jackman. But I knew that my passion really was hip hop, and I knew that for me to get the training that I needed, I couldn't find it in Australia at that point. So we would go to LA every year, and we did this about 7 times. And would go find the best choreographers in the world when it comes to hip hop and just train. Like we'll be training 5 days a week, you know what I mean? Taking 5 classes a day. And I feel like these are the types of things that you need. Like if you want to take yourself seriously, like you need to be training that hard. And you don't necessarily have to go that route. A lot of people do full time, like I mentioned earlier. But for me, the fastest way to get to where I needed to go and where I visualized myself being, training in LA was what I needed to do.
Justin Timberlake and all his dances were really massive around that time. So we used to take class with, people like Misha Gabriel, Marty Kadelka, who choreographed for Justin. Those were the guys taking class, and I think Joel and I were just kind of mind blown. We were kind of swept up into this world of like, these are the best dancers in the world. Like you had to get to LA, like Joel was saying, to dance with the best.
However, these days, the level in Australia in the last 10 years has really risen. Because you can find so many amazing choreographers that can do what people do all around the world. So do your research and find those choreographers out there, because you can get the most amazing training on a world-class level. You want to make sure that you're training as much as you can. If you're not able to do full-time or go overseas, go to class as much as you can. And when you're not at class, freestyle. At least an hour a day, lock yourself in your room and just perfect your skills.
So depending on whatever job you're auditioning for, you want to make sure that you research accordingly for that job. If it's like a musical theatre show like West Side Story, you want to dive into what that show is, what the characters were, so you really sort of get a sense of the characters you need to play.
Yeah, and in saying that, secondly, find out who the choreographers are. So I would go onto Instagram, find out who that is, and figure out what kind of style they do.
What they're looking for.
What they're looking for. Yeah. So you want to show that you're confident, even if you're not feeling it, yeah? So be brave, make sure, get yourself to the front line, stand behind the choreographer. You really want the panel to notice you before you get broken up into smaller groups, yeah? So don't be afraid to ask questions, have the confidence just to stand there and be noticed. So by the time you break into groups, they're already like, okay, I've seen you before.
Yeah, you and I have done auditions together a lot of times, right? So you know that like it can be scary sometimes walking into an audition. But I think what most choreographers are looking for when they're teaching you the combos is you want to mimic the choreographer as much as possible.
The choreographer wants to know that every night you go on stage, you're going to give the same performance and you're going to give them exactly what they looked for in the audition every single time. But in saying that, I would definitely have a few tricks up your sleeve, because 9 times out of 10 they're going to say, all right, so after the combo you got 4 counts of 8 and now freestyle. Yeah? So when that's happening, have some choreography, have some tricks. If you can flip, show off something that makes you stand out from the person next to you. It's like somebody that's just reaching and diving deep into being present in the moment. Do you know what I mean? Like being really centered and present and just like honing in like a hawk, So it's like when you see that intensity in somebody's eyes, right? And they're just being authentic in that moment, it's hard not to watch that.
So when you're coming into the dance industry as a young pre-professional, the tools that you really need are you need great headshots, self-tape. Also, your social media really helps these days as well. You want to streamline your social media so that it looks classy and professional. If you don't have an agent at the moment, it's like a comp card or a video reel. That's 10 years ago we didn't have that. So most of the time people will go to your social media account to see what you're doing in class. It is the best place for an agent to go to see your work.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always looking for dancers on Instagram. We book a lot of shows through The Star. We're creating live entertainment for them, and sometimes the dancers that you want, they're not in town. So I'll call up a friend and be like, give me a recommendation, and then I'm looking at people's Instagram, and then I'm literally looking and I'm studying and going, seeing whether this person can fit into my production. I've literally booked people based off their social media that I've never met before, until they've and meeting them for the first time in a rehearsal room.
We had to learn how to be in a room and throw an idea out there and really have someone bounce off that idea. We learned really fast that you've got to workshop an idea to see what it potentially could be, and then if you explore it as much as possible, maybe it might not be right for the show, but not trampling on people's ideas is a really great sort of lesson to learn in a room when you're working creatively with other people.
Yeah, because when you throw an idea out there sometimes, it might be a great idea, but then someone always comes along and goes, okay, that's great, but what about if we just come from this angle and they throw a little bit of magic on top of that, and then someone else comes along and goes, yeah, and then boom, and then it just kind of throw it all into a mixing pot, and all of a sudden with all this collaboration, it turns into something incredible.
It makes it magic right there.
Okay, so I've been a casting director before for TVCs. Make sure that you've read the brief. You don't necessarily have to film it on a fancy camera. You can film it on your iPhone and use available light. Just go stand next to a window. Like right here, we've got windows right here, and this is acting as our key light. Make sure that there's enough light falling on your face. Bring the camera back, make sure it's full body. Yeah, that's very important. And then they may ask you as well to do an ID. So, you want to write something down on a piece of paper, your name, your agent, and yeah, keep it around about a mid right here. Yeah, speak nice and clearly, and then on top of all of that, you want to show some personality, because when it comes to TVCs, sometimes it's not about being the best dancer. Sometimes I want to see personality, because the role might be 9 to 5, guy opens up a fridge, and he doesn't even have to have the best dance skills.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But what we're looking for is personality most of the time. So do that.
So when you're creating a solo to send in for an audition where there's not necessarily a brief attached, you only get one chance to make a really great first impression. So you want to make sure you have a really strong beginning and a really strong ending. And in the middle, you want to filter it with all your tricks, all your kicks, turns and jumps, all the things you've been practicing for, in your leading up to your professional dance careers, that's the time when you shine and to show what you really have in your back pocket.
So you have self-tapes for TVCs and castings and auditions, but then on the other side, when it comes to having a show reel, if you haven't done enough gigs where you can compile clips and put it together into a show reel, what a lot of people do is they hire a professional videographer. So you want to invest a bit of money into this, and you want to make sure you find somebody that shoots a lot of dance. I would choose 3 styles to really show off what you have. For girls, do something in heels and show us that you can dance in heels, and then show us some technique. And thirdly, you can do some jazz or some hip hop or something like JFH. So something that shows off that you can do some strong jazz, commercial jazz, hip hop with some tricks.
If I was 17 years old and coming into the industry for the first time, I would be looking at who's choreographing the biggest jobs, who choreographs musical theatre shows, and you really want to get to those classes as much as possible, and you really want to build that relationship, because you never know where a relationship will lead to what job down the track.
In saying that, I know that there was a point in my career where, it might have just been like 2 weeks where there was no jobs coming through. And so I was like, okay, cool, I'm going to get to somebody's class. And I did that, and literally the next day, the phone rang and I booked a job that went over a week. So get to class, get to know choreographers. You want to get in front of as many choreographers as you can. So when you're on the job, what choreographers are looking for, right, is someone that rocks up early. You want to be early because these things, like people notice these things. Yeah, and it's the work ethic that sometimes is going to get you across the line too, because there might be 10 other people in the room that can dance as good as you, right? But if you're rocking up late, you're slacking off in that area. Sometimes that's the difference of being booked on the next job.
Well, yeah, it's really hard to get a really great reputation, but it's really easy to get a bad reputation by being late, never picking up your phone,
100%,
things like that.
Yeah, so you can spend your career building this, a great reputation, but it can end like that. Do you know what I mean?
You want to be polite. You want to be that person that is a joy and a pleasure to work with every time. Along with being on time and having self-management and picking up your phone for jobs.
And work hard. You need to be working the hardest in the room, especially if you're new. You need to be working the hardest in the room every single time, because choreographers notice these things.
Make sure you have as many skills in your back pocket as you can. Don't pigeonhole yourself into one style. Learn tap, learn jazz, learn hip hop, learn to sing, learn to act. The more skills you have, the more employable you are to whoever's booking jobs.
If you feel like you got a knack for choreography, start as soon as you can, yeah, because you have to start putting your work out there, and probably first of all it's going to be out there in classes, yeah, so you can workshop your choreography on other people. You got to start building from when you're a young age, because 9 times out of 10 in this industry, people aren't going to take you seriously until you've had a few years under your belt. So start getting that creative process happening now, right?
Yeah.
And my last tip would be, we are creative people, yeah? So, don't be afraid to find new talents and new skills. Like if you're into photography, pick up a camera. For me, I went back to school and I studied cinematography. So I enjoy shooting music videos now and shooting short films. And even though it's not dance, dance is really, it shines through with everything that I do. I look through the lens as a dancer first, and I'll always be a dancer first.
Always write new goals and then set out to achieve those things you've written down. And then when you achieve them, set new goals and always set the bar higher. Evolution and picking up new skills, like Joel said, is really a part of being in a creative space and being an artist as well. I've had to learn to do event planning and run events. Joel now works behind the camera.
Dance is great. Like if you have to just wake up in the morning, go do a rehearsal, do a job at the end of the night, right? And then repeat, I'm telling you, it is the most fun, beautiful existence. It really is.